Welcome back to the Sports Block, another home edition. I'm joining here with my two usual co-hosts, friends and family, Ryan Magnuson and Ryan Grover. Welcome back again, fellas.
Yes,
Such
sir.
a cute intro.
I love it.
Hey, man, when you're wearing the Wolfpack pride over there, you got to call it out right like it is.
Oh, yeah.
In case you couldn't see
Oh,
it.
so this thing keeps going on, man. We keep having the debate, on the level of sports, obviously local from a high school perspective. But tonight we get to branch out a little bit and talk a little bit from a professional standpoint on what that's looking like coming back specifically now for hockey.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the big difference that you see in kind of the moving forward of opening sports leagues is a lot of it. I mean, it's multiple aspects. A, people want to see it. The athletes. B, want to be out there, and C, it's a little taboo, but money is needed in this time, right? So. Sports leagues want to get it going, obviously as safely as possible, and keep it going in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm like we said last week. Almost the theme of last week kind of was, sports are starting to come back, and it's weird in some ways, but we're here for it. And I'm definitely here. I've been trying to work hockey in selfishly to each podcast so far, so I didn't have to be as coy this time. It was a lot easier, but it's really cool to be able to talk to him and hear that the behind the scenes, the amount. I mean, Zoom workouts, and if we can send a message out there to the Canes marketing, we need some Peloton chirp segments. I need to hear what the Peloton chirps are. I need that in my life. But going to the hockey aspect, it's cool to hear that they're almost fully healthy, and they're going to be able to hit the ground running here. So I can't wait to tune in to see what the Canes are like when hockey comes back.
Yeah, when we were talking to Coach Burniston, I'm not going to tattle on you because it's pretty obvious. You were fanboying pretty hard.
Oh yeah, no, I tried to restrain it as much as I could. That was me restraining it.
Well, I know a lot of people in this area are excited to see the Canes return. And it'll be a lot different, obviously, if you can't step foot inside that amazing arena. But in whatever capacity it is, when hockey is back, that they've already proved this is one of the best places for it in terms of fan experience and atmosphere, and what's being put on the ice. So I think it's going to be really, really fun. And the other cool aspect about the show today is even though we're talking hockey and we're talking professional sports for a change, we still got that high school tie-in back to the Creek, which is also pretty cool.
And he definitely, Coach Bernstein definitely gave Middle Creek some nice props, and really seemed to miss the place, which brought a little tear to my eye. I always, not me personally, but I love to hear nostalgia stories, and he definitely holds Middle Creek in high regard.
The Creek family is strong, man. Always will be.
Always.
Well, guys, without further ado, I'll go ahead and send it to break, and when we come back, Coach Bill Burniston on the tube for you. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Sports Block. Welcome back, everybody, to the Sports Block. This time we are joined by a wonderful guest, Coach Bill Burniston. You might know him from his wonderful years here at Middle Creek as the school's athletic trainer, but more recently he serves as the head strength and conditioning coach for your Carolina Hurricanes. Coach, how you doing tonight?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a weird world we're living in right now, and we like to bring in ex-teachers, ex-students, ex-athletes, and current as well. And we thought you'd be perfect for this. How are you coping in this weird time right now?
Yeah, it's challenging times for everyone, and it kind of it's how we embrace and how we react to being different and obviously not having our normal lives. Personally, I like the challenge. I like my day-to-day operation is completely changed, and I like the challenges. I like the fact that how are we going to come out of this? How are we going to turn this into an advantage?
Yeah, and in what ways have you seen your athletes coping with it? And I guess on a larger scale, what have you been able to do in this downtime with your athletes?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and I'm sure that if we have some Canes fans out there, I'm sure that you guys know our coach Rod Brendamore happens to be one of the fittest coaches in the league, um, and he's somebody that really embraces strength and conditioning. So, first of all, I have a great position with the Canes because I get so much support from my head coach. But interesting enough, we were in New Jersey when the season was put on pause. And to be completely honest with you, I didn't even get to the team bus before Rod had grabbed me and said, "What's your plan? Like, what are we going to do to keep these guys, physically fit?" And he said, "You need to be thinking about it," which I had already, heard some rumble. We might be, putting the season on pause. It just happened to be, a little sooner than I had thought. But we immediately started thinking and brainstorming. Started brainstorming with our sports medicine staff and just kind of throwing ideas around. And I would say it was probably 2 days. Within 2 days, we were able to, have programs out to everyone in our entire organization from their our prospects all the way to our NHL players. So it was a challenge, but it was something that we were able to do, and we were able to communicate that and work together as a staff to accomplish that.
Yeah.
And fast forward to now, there are reports that they're working on coming back, something maybe like a 24 team playoff. I don't think anything's official yet, but if we were to see something like that, what is that going to look like? And are we in store for maybe the craziest playoffs ever?
Yeah, it's hard to tell, right? I mean, it's just it's unprecedented. We've never been in this situation. It's hard to tell. I can tell you this, we're going to make sure that our athletes are ready to go. We're going to make sure that our players are physically fit. We're going to make sure that we are progressively loading them so that they have a little bit of time to adapt to the season. This is really a crazy time. You think that, unless we were going to the Stanley Cup final, that would have been the situation this year. Um, Potentially, we could be starting our off-season training program. So really, where are we sitting right now? June 1st, we usually start our programming again, unless we're in the Stanley Cup Finals. Uh, that's our off-season summer program, getting guys ready. So at this point, it's all a challenge. It's all new. I think if we do go to the 24 team playoffs, I think what you'll see is you know teams being able to come in and start using their training facilities, and then there'll probably be anywhere between a 3 and a 5 week um, preparation period, and then I think you'll see some games being played. Probably not. I doubt we're going to jump right into the play shot. I mean, we probably need to play a couple of games prior to that, and then from that standpoint, jump into the playoffs.
Yeah, and hockey's such a global sport, and at the start of this process, a lot of players return to their home country. Um, and some guys are still in Raleigh, obviously. But have you been, you mentioned Rod kind of coming to you and saying, "What are we doing?" Have you been in touch with the players, giving them instructions, then things to do, or is that a personal thing to kind of keep up with strength and conditioning in this town?
Yeah, so what we've done is we partnered with a company called Bridge Athletics, which is an online platform where we can send workouts. So what we did was we individualized programs for every one of our players. Like I said, from prospects all the way up to our NHL players, all based on what equipment So it's easy to start a program, program, but if they don't have access to the equipment and the things that they need to run that program, then it's useless, right? It's just a program. We need to. So some of the guys in Europe that have left the United States and gone to Europe, they actually have been training with their strength coaches. So I keep tabs on those guys. We have a WhatsApp app, and we FaceTime. We do all kinds of things. Obviously, the challenge is the time difference. So what we'll try to do is, get those guys early in the morning here, which is already they've generally already done their workouts. So I'll just follow up with them, see how they're doing, maybe once or twice a week with their strength coaches, and I know their strength coaches, so I have an opportunity to interact with them as well. That's something that was very important to me when I took this position. I didn't want to drive all of our programming, to our athletes and say you have to do this, they do it. What I wanted to do is I wanted to meet the people that they actually train with in the summer. So, in times like this, I've already developed those relationships with their strength coaches back home. So I'm able to send a text or an email or something along those lines with them. So the guys in Europe, I know that they're working well. We have guys in Canada. I know what they're doing right now. And then obviously the guys that are here in Raleigh, I know what they're doing. And, we're trying to stay on top of it the best we can. Every Thursday, we have a Zoom call. It's a Zoom workout. So players get on, and every week, somebody else is responsible for running the workout. So today, Ryan DeZingle actually ran the workout for the boys. And, it's good for the guys to get connected, see each other. Obviously they have their group texts and what have you, but just trying to keep the group connected is what we've been trying to do. So it's been a challenge, but we've come up with some ways to do it. We also do on Tuesdays and Saturdays, so 3 days a week we do a Peloton ride for guys that have a Peloton, so that they can continue to compete against one another, and they can, obviously chirping is a big part of hockey, making sure
Yeah.
and challenge each other. But even guys that don't have Pelotons can jump on the Peloton app, and at least we can see that they're there, and guys that are working out on maybe a regular stationary bike or something along those lines. So it's been great. We've done a pretty good job of keeping connected with our guys, so this way we feel like we didn't miss a beat.
Yeah.
Coach, let me ask you this: as you guys do plan on that return, and facilities, hopefully open up soon, you can get back to kind of preparing over that 2, 3, 4 week period, whatever it is, before games resume. What does that look like? What do you envision? What are you guys talking about in terms of still having to follow some of these health guidelines of social distancing or wearing masks, or how many guys can work out at a time? What have you guys talked about with that?
Well, we're still waiting for guidance from the league on that. But once we do receive that, obviously we're running through scenarios right now, and thinking that we have a plan, and obviously we'll have to make some modifications to that plan based on whatever the league puts out. But what we're trying to do right now, obviously, we're going to take a survey every morning of our guys. Now, that'll be a health survey. We already do something similar to that. So every morning our guys get a wellness survey during the season. How well did you sleep? How, what's your energy level? What's your fatigue level? All those types of questions. It takes them about 15 to 20 seconds to fill out, so we can get a good feel of where they are. And I'm sure our medical staff will be doing temperature checks, things of that nature. I'm sure all staff will be wearing masks. And then I would imagine it's going to be small groups, somewhere between 3 and 5 players. So we're prepared for that.
All right, so Coach, you spoke a little bit about kind of the things that the NHL were trying to do to ensure safe staff, personnel, and all things like that. Have you heard about any possibilities of bubble sites for games? I know that we talked about the different conferences maybe having the playoff system. What have you heard on that regard?
Yeah, I did hear that the league was considering going to some cities and making them hubs, and house anywhere between 8 and 9 teams. I'm pretty sure that's what I heard. I know that 9 might be a lot, but I did hear that that's a possibility that we would be going to a couple of cities and doing that. And I don't know. At one point, Raleigh was in the running. I'm not sure if we're still there. I know it depends more on our new practice facility and whether that's going to be up, and running in time.
Right. And obviously, a big part of that is the infrastructure and the manpower that it's needed there for those personnel and staff. If that were to be a possibility, and this is a big if, so feel free to indulge us however much you'd like. Kind of, what do you think would be the biggest challenges to having to maybe share space, living space, practice space, and obviously game space as well with other teams?
Yeah, I think it would be, to me, it seems like it would be a scheduling night. But, obviously for the reasons that you just had mentioned, right? So you're talking about sharing hotels, right? So what are you doing for meals? Are you sharing meal rooms? Are you sharing locker rooms? So I think quite a bit, unanswered at this point. But, I'm sure as it's going to be as efficient as possible. Those are certainly the challenges that we would have. Just there's a lot that goes into being on the road, right? It's making sure, like even from our standpoint, right? If we have a 5-game trip, we know what we need to pack for a 5-game trip, right? I know how much protein I need, how much, how many supplies, all those kinds of things we need to bring from a nutrition standpoint. Our equipment guys know how many sticks they need to bring. So I think those are some challenges that I could see. Just making sure you're there for a month in the same place. Those are certainly going to be some challenges that we'll have to work through. Obviously, we'll make do with what we have, but I think there's just so much that goes into being on the
right. And obviously, we haven't heard from the NHL yet on what they're planning on doing. And I would love to kind of see what a best case scenario for you as a strength and conditioning coach. What would be a best scenario in these upcoming weeks and trying to get the season started?
Well, best case scenario, for me would be having our guys come back to Raleigh. So they come back to Raleigh, we start working with them, we figure out, where they are and how we can progress them through their workload so that we can, make sure that there's such a low risk or lower the risk as much as possible even when they do start playing. So that's really what our goal is, right? We try to keep our athletes as healthy as we manage works, on a daily basis. So those are things that I would like to see, from our guys. So I would need to know the sooner they can come back, the better I can evaluate them and see where they are and make decisions based on where they are and what we need to do.
So I think the biggest question on Hurricanes fans' minds right now would be: are the Canes going to be fully healthy going in to a playoffs or close to it? When a guy like Dougie Hamilton went down, it seemed like a pipe dream for him to come back. And then the Canes went out and got Sammy Vatanen, and Caniacs haven't been able to see him on the ice yet. So are the Hurricanes going to be healthy?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and that's a tough question for me to answer. I did hear our general manager saying, I think he was on the fan today. I did hear him say that he thought we would be relatively healthy, with maybe the exception of one player not being ready who had surgery at the end of the season. But as far as everybody else, we should be ready to go, according to our GM.
And you bring up Tom Dundon, and so what is it like? What has he brought to this organization?
Well, Tom's a very passionate individual. He loves to win, like most of us, and he wants to make sure that we have the resources necessary in order to put out a good product. So, from my standpoint, when Tom came in, we had spent quite a bit of money on making our weight room better. and adding some technology such as heart rate monitors, velocity-based training. We started looking at some better evaluation tools. From my standpoint, it's been absolutely great, and I have a great relationship with them. I love the fact that we can pick up the phone and call him at any point. We can talk to him. He'll call us, and we have that open door relationship, and I do.
And you mentioned that working for Rod Brindamore, pushing the strength and conditioning agenda is not a problem there. So what comes to mind for me is if you had to pick a player that fans normally wouldn't think of as being strong in the weight room or really well conditioned, oftentimes in hockey you have guys that aren't as big, but you'll hear announcers say, and you'll see in their play that they punch above their weight, they play bigger than they are. I was wondering if there's a player that shows that in the weight room that fans would be surprised.
Yeah, I think we have such a group. They all work hard, and they all push limits to their athletic ability, and that's really what you want. I guess one athlete that comes to mind, is Sebastian Aho. He's so smart, and he's I think he's sneaky strong. Guys like Trevor Van Riemsdyk, he's sneaky explosive in the weight room, and it's interesting. I know he's not with us anymore, but Lucas Walmart, very sneaky, powerful. It's very interesting when you see some of these guys, perform in the weight room, and obviously taking some metrics that we take. We can kind of watch them over their career and over time, and watch their improvements and what have you. But those three guys come to mind, pretty quickly for me.
Coach, let me ask you this, kind of switching gears real fast from a former athletic perspective as a player. The idea of moving into playing games without fans. Obviously, the PNC Arena is one of the loudest arenas around when it comes for hockey. As athletes, we all thrive off that roar of the crowd. What do you think that's going to be like from a player's perspective, just as an athlete of any sport, formerly playing in an empty arena?
Wes, I'll tell you what, I get goosebumps when I walk out in the tunnel of the PNC Arena. Like, it is so loud, it's so exciting, particularly during the playoffs last year. It's just such a atmosphere. I can't imagine what it's like playing with no fans. Obviously, our guys are professionals. They're going to do what they can to go out on the ice and perform. But from an energy standpoint, I think it's going to be very difficult to play without fans. The fans feed off the Carolina Hurricanes, but the Carolina Hurricanes feed off the fans too, right? It's a two-way street, and I think we need them. I really do.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a big difference. Almost a feel of, obviously a higher competition level, but it'll be almost like the feel of a practice in there in terms of the atmosphere of the ambiance without any sound. And, you kind of wonder where the, where the role of the underdog comes in that normally thrives off of that home crowd. If we're in a situation where A, you're completely away from where you normally would be at home in front of your fans, and then B, without any atmosphere of fan noise at all.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be such a big challenge. It might be the biggest challenge, playing with no fans.
And Coach, I wanted to kind of bring this a little bit full circle as we keep you for a few more minutes. You've had experience dealing with athletes across a wide range of skill level and age. I would love to see. I mean, obviously, in your now the size and scope is obviously a little bit bigger than what it is at the high school level when you were with Middle Creek. Are there any similar across all in dealing with athletes, and what are those? What are those? And can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, the similarities that we have, regardless of the level, is athletes want to compete, right? Regardless of your level, they want to compete and they want to perform to the best of their ability, and that goes across the entire spectrum, sports from youth sports all the way up to professional sports. I would say that the biggest similarity and the common thread is the compete. From that standpoint, I think that, obviously as you move through, there's different, at the high school level, not every high school athlete wants to go on to the collegiate level, and then not every collegiate athlete wants to go on to the professional level, or able to do that. But, at the professional level, that's certainly, those guys want to stay in the league and they want to stay there as long as they can. They get paid pretty well for playing a sport. So, that what I would say would be the biggest difference, but the similarities are certainly the compete level, and,
Right.
I enjoyed my time, on the high school level. Prior to being at Middle Creek, I was on the high school level in New Jersey for, I want to say somewhere around, 13 or 14 years.
Right.
So I'm very familiar with the high school athletes, and that was such a great place for me. And, Middle Creek has a special place in my heart for sure. So, you bring that up, and I know that wasn't your question, but, my time at Middle Creek was really awesome, and I enjoyed being with those athletes who wanted to compete, just like the pro athletes, and the
Right.
preparation that goes into it. Those are all similarities. Everybody wants to
Right.
prepare to be the best.
Right. And in your 4 years at Middle Creek, you did have a chance to see quite a few teams make late season runs. Is there any story or any particular athlete, maybe a coach? I'll kind of leave it up to you that kind of comes to mind during your time you spent at Middle Creek.
Wes, you can probably speak, to this as well. I felt like my relationship, with all our coaches and all our athletes, regardless of what their sport was, that was really what my job was, right? To create relationships so that athletes felt comfortable coming to speak to me, and that coaches felt comfortable, if I had to, talk to them about injuries or things of that nature. So I can't really, I loved all my time there. I can't tell you that there was, one specific athlete or, one specific team that I really enjoyed being with. My time with Wes, and his girls basketball team, I enjoyed the boys basketball team, wrestling, football. I would say that, as an athletic trainer in North Carolina, a high school athletic trainer, the majority of your time is spent, particularly in the fall, with the football team, just because
Sure.
of the rules and regulations that go into that. So, working with Sean Crocker and Randy Ratlin, I had a great time, with all those guys. And, there were some great athletes that rolled through during those times. And, I don't even want to start, mentioning some of them, because if I miss somebody, I'm going to feel bad on that. But, my time was really, I value my time at Middle Creek. And to be completely honest with you, even where I'm at right now, there are times that I miss, being at the high school level, and particularly Middle Creek. There's really a special bond that goes on in there. That culture is really contagious, and I love being around that. And I don't want to say, that was one thing that I noticed in my time, that the culture did change, from, it was a young school when I first got in there, but, by the time I left, I really felt like, Middle Creek was moving in such a great direction, and certainly just a great place.
We appreciate everything you did for all of us. I know me personally and all the other coaches and players did too. And it was definitely a fun time, an enjoyable time. And I know we all learned a lot from you, and myself included. It was awesome to have you there. And, we wish you all the wealth and everything you're doing now, but we definitely miss you over there too.
Yeah, I miss being there. And, it's interesting where, life takes you, and I can tell you that, my approach with high school athletes and professional athletes, I don't really see a difference. I've always treated that athlete like they were a professional athlete, right? There's one way to do things, and it's the right way. I always say, Wes, I think you've probably heard me, talk about it, and it's first class or we don't budge, right? Like don't accept anything but the absolute best. And if you don't accept it, guess what you usually get? The best, right? So you're going to get the best effort. You're going to get the best attitude. You're going to get, all the bests if you don't accept the other stuff. So,
Hmm.
for me, that's always been the way I've treated everybody, right? I expect your best effort. I expect your best attitude. And, there's no room, for, being average, unless you go as hard as you can, and that's where you happen to fall. Then I have no problem with that. But when you're not striving to be
Sure.
the absolute best at what you do, and there's a problem. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with that with my own kids. We talk about that constantly. Your goal is to be the absolute best at what you do. If you fall in the middle, hey, then you got no regret. But that's always been my approach.
And your mantra still stands on that back wall back there in the athletic hallway. The yes, you
Oh, is
will.
that right?
It's still there, man. We
Yeah.
still live by it, and we still hit it on the way out the hall.
Yeah, I love that. That's good. So, you got a legacy, huh?
Stands
Well,
by,
maybe
man. It's not going anywhere. It lives on.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's good stuff. You always want to try to leave a place a little bit better than you found it. And I hope that I did that at Middle Creek. It's not always the way. Same thing. With the business that we opened up. I stopped running the day to day when I took over at the Hurricanes. So I'm hoping I left that a little bit better than it was. And someday, if I ever leave the Carolina Hurricanes, I hope I left that organization or leave that organization a little bit better than it was, when I was there. I mean, that's really what your goal is.
Yeah, well, Coach, I'm going to wrap things up
Yeah,
here. I don't want to keep you
yeah.
for too
I can
long.
talk to you guys.
Yeah, we really appreciate your time, and we wish you the best of luck going forward here.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's been awesome, and I wish you guys nothing but the best as well. And if I could ever do anything for you guys, please don't hesitate to reach out, and it'd be fun. Getting back together. I'll have to roll up to the creek when things get better, and stick back in there.
That's right.
Sounds
Definitely.
all right. Well,
Good
you're
stuff.
watching the Sports Pod. We'll be right back.
Hello and welcome back to the Sports Block. My name is Emily Doran, and I'm here with Sam Bellantoni. Usually, you'll find us behind the camera, but today we're here with special guest, Mr. Shane Willis, who's the manager of amateur and youth hockey for the Carolina Hurricanes. Shane, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, although we continue on with our pandemic. I think everyone is now starting to learn how to live at home and work from home, but it's nice to see us move into stage 2 and things kind of calm down here in our state, and hopefully we're back at all these sporting events very soon.
So, as someone who's deeply rooted in hockey in North Carolina, what has this been like for you in the hockey world?
Well, I think it's twofold, really, for me in my role. Obviously, first and foremost for the Carolina Hurricanes and the National Hockey League being put on pause, and the players obviously not knowing when to come back. There's still 13, 14 games remaining this season, plus the playoffs. And the Carolina Hurricanes made such an exciting run last year in the playoffs to lose in the Eastern Conference Final. I think the momentum of fan support and hockey in this community were really on the rise again. And so to have to deal with something like this really puts a little bit of a damper on it and slows things down. And then the second part of it is in the youth hockey world. Usually right now we'd be gearing up for a bunch of different summer camps we can put on, keeping the kids on the ice, working on their skills and their training on and off the ice, and preparing for August, September start of next fall. And right now, all of our young players are at home. Hopefully they're using some of our video tips that we're sending out to work on their skills at home in their driveway, maybe do some workouts of their own at home with family and friends. But everyone wants to get back in the rink and just get back with their teammates. I think everyone misses that as well. So a couple of different assets of being away from the rink to kind of affect my world.
So as the youth manager, what do you exactly oversee?
So the biggest role I work with, obviously the Junior Hurricanes, which is the travel program here locally. I sit on their board. But I also work very closely with Thomas Whitmire Weathers at the Polar Ice House and the Recreational League. I think our focus from a Hurricane standpoint is not only travel elite hockey players. We want to be able to cover every hockey player in this state, whether it's a beginning player in a learn to play program whether someone's just playing recreational or it's that elite travel hockey player. We want to make sure we're part of their journey, we're part of their career, and helping them achieve whatever that might be. The other part we've seen huge growth is in the girls and women's game here locally. Through our Learn to Play program, we've seen more and more young girls take to the sport, and we've been able to develop teams at every level to travel, but we also see a lot of young girls continue to play through the rec league. So in the future, that's kind of one of our driving points in hiring Alyssa Gagliardi last year, who played professionally in the women's league, to kind of be at the forefront of that and continue to help grow the girls and women's game.
What's it like to have her be a part of this?
It's exciting. I've known Alyssa for a few years now. She's helped out at many of our camps, so I know her passion and experience in the game was going to be a key asset to us, and it really helps take a lot of pressure and a lot of things off my plate on a daily level that someone can focus totally in. I think that's the biggest thing when you're working throughout all of these kids and all these different levels is you get torn in so many different directions. And in my role, it's one of those situations you want to make sure that you're not missing anything. And we feel that the girls' game is a very important part, especially here in our area. We see it across the country as it continues to grow. And how can we get it to that next level and help these young girls kind of live out their dream of maybe playing professionally one day?
So obviously you have a close relationship with the players and coaches. How are they doing during this whole entire pandemic?
I think they're getting a little bit antsy. I was lucky enough to play alongside Rod Brindamore, so I know his demeanor and his daily routine. He likes to be active. He likes to be at the rink. He likes to focus. He's always prepared. But I think that's one of the things that everyone has done, no matter what job you're in, is how do you adapt and how do you stay prepared? And we know our coaching staff is working very hard each and every week on, our favorite new thing, which I call the Zoom Olympics. You're on Zoom calls every single day, looking at video and preparing for when they do start back. The National Hockey League is very confident that they will come back, probably without fans in the building, but coming back and finishing the season off before taking a break and starting next season. So I think all the players are doing their best to stay in the best shape as possible. We see now around the country that some rinks are starting to open so players can get back on the ice and start skating. There are a few players that went back to Europe, and I know some of them are skating. So everyone is doing their best just to stay prepared. I think for the players, it's a good time to mentally get away from the game, but physically continue to try and stay in the best shape as possible so when the puck does drop again, they're ready to get back up to speed.
We've heard that everything for youth sports is canceled pretty much throughout the rest of June and will kick back up hopefully in July. What are some of the discussions that you've been having with youth hockey for this?
Yeah, I think going into the governor's presentation last night, the rinks were hopefully and excited, ready to open next week. Obviously, that didn't happen. It could happen in some way, but obviously at a much smaller scale. The rink owners are carefully looking at if it's safe for them to open yet or not, if they will be waiting till the end of June. So we're still examining that. But I think our communication with the rinks has been very clear that our number one goal, as everyone should be, is the safety of our young kids and our adults that go in and play in these rinks. We want to make sure that we're following along the guidelines of the state, that we're prepared for everything. We're helping the rinks get prepared to make sure they're running safely. And, as I said, we're excited that we're getting closer, but we also don't want to rush things and end up taking a step back. We want to make sure everything's clear and safe to get our kids back on the ice in the right way and get them out playing the game once again.
So going off of safety, when you were saying, if hockey was to return, how do you think it would be impacted by social distancing since it is a very highly contact sport?
Yeah, funny you should ask that. We had that conversation this week of, obviously our older kids, it's a full contact sport. They're getting involved physically. They're always very close. There's always battles for the puck, and you can't play a zone defense, if you would, like you do in basketball. So those are some of the questions. I think we feel a little bit safer that the kids are wearing full equipment. They're not touching. Obviously, they're wearing masks. The masks do have holes in them. But we feel that at a distance with the equipment and everything, and encouraging players that when they come into the rink, we keep a good social distancing within the locker rooms, within the lobby, exiting out of different exits. And then when they get home, making sure that all these families realize and have the ability to have the knowledge of how to properly wash this equipment each and every day and make sure it's ready and clean before they come back to the rink.
And many of these final games were going to help some players earn athletic scholarships or gain attention from scouts. Have you heard anything about how these processes are being changed or altered?
Nothing yet. I think the youth hockey season was basically over, and I think the NHL, if you ask an NHL scout, most of them at this time are already very prepared going into the draft of who they're going to select in the first round, who they have targeted in the second round. So I think this pause came late enough for every scout and every team, whether it be college, junior, or the pro leagues, to have enough information on all these young players to make sure they make the proper decisions, whether it be in the National Hockey League draft or in the college ranks where they're handing out their scholarships.
Do you think the NHL is making plans to have their draft just like the NFL?
I think they're definitely looking at that. I think they've been in contact with the NFL to make sure they see how it was run and how it came off very clean. I think the one argument, or actually many arguments, that some of the general managers have is making it fair. The NHL does have a lottery to see who ends up getting the first pick. And because all the games haven't been played out, teams aren't going to be seated exactly where they are if they were to finish the season regularly. That there's some questions and concerns of how the teams settle in to the draft order. And I think for a team that's at the bottom of the league in a rebuild, having a pick, whether it be first overall or at least in the top three, is very important. And if something was to go wrong there and one of those teams fall out of that, that can affect that team's rebuild for 4 to 5 to 6 years down the road before they get things back on track. So I think the league is looking very closely at it. If I was a guy looking at it, I would say they end up pushing the draft back a little bit. I could still see them doing it virtually as the NFL did, but I would see the date that is usually late in June. I believe it's June 23rd this year, being pushed back some until the season is completely finished.
And of course, most people know you from Fox Sports Carolinas as a reporter, but you're also an NHL alumni yourself who has played for the Canes. What's it like to report for the league that you're a part of?
It's been a tremendous honor to get the opportunity to work on Fox Sports. I wasn't really doing a lot of broadcasts or anything when they came to me and asked if I'd want to be a part of the pregame show. So it took a few shows, almost the entire season, to kind of settle in and get used to it. But I think the main thing is, after playing the game, you kind of realize and know what the players are not only trying to do, but kind of what they're going through mentally. And then obviously being an ex-player, when you walk in a locker room, you have the respect of the players and the ex-teammates. So it's a little bit easier for me to have access to the guys if I'm trying to find something out, making sure it comes out in the right way. I think when you work for a team, the biggest thing is making sure you're promoting your players, you're putting your players in the right light. They are going to have a tough game. They are going to have streaks where they play bad. And I think it's one thing to say that about a player, but making sure you know enough about that player and his character to back that up, that it's not always a put-down mode. Because you are working for the Carolina Hurricanes, first and foremost, is us promoting our team and promoting the players that are part of it.
So there's been a lot of talk recently about when the NHL is going to release their plans to the public. I know it's really up in the air since everything's changing every day. But in your opinion, what do you think is the best way for them to open back up safely if they're to continue with this season and the playoff run?
Well, I know right now the main stories that are coming out, and I read most of the same things that everyone does who's watching this, is they're looking at potentially going to a 2014 format and doing that out of 2 cities. So what I've heard is that Las Vegas would be the West and potentially Columbus being the East city. 12 teams would go to each one of those cities. There would be some form of games because the players don't want to come back and start the first round of the playoffs. That's been one of their concerns as far as getting back up to speed. Again, making sure that everything is fair across the board for each and every team is going to be a huge factor when these start. Then it's a matter of getting through the 24 teams and then back down to a regular 16-team playoffs. So I think we'll hear some news by June 1st. I know they're on calls constantly now, each and every day, trying to make sure the format is agreeable to the owners, to the general managers, and to the players through their union, so everyone can agree on it and get back to work. Again, the league is excited to come back to play, but they are very focused too on the safety of the communities they will be in and their players.
Yeah, so going off of what you said about there being like certain cities for some of the teams to play in, I heard that Raleigh was going maybe to be thrown into the mix. What do you think that would do for hockey fans in the area?
Well, I think it'd be great, just more exposure. I think any major event that can be put on in this city, you're going to see a jump. We saw a jump in participation and growth after the draft was held here. We saw another jump in numbers after the All-Star game. So anytime you could get a group of teams together that are in your practice facilities, especially now since no one's working, that you could go out and watch these guys each and every day. The unfortunate part is there probably wouldn't be people in PNC watching all these games. But I think as we sit here at home, and as you both know, at night you're always looking for something sporting to watch. I mean, you just saw it from the Michael Jordan documentary, how many people watched that just to see live sports on TV again, I think is a major push, and teams can kind of combat the finances that they're losing through this time without having the fans by getting back on TV in front of all their great fans.
Do you think that would have an impact on the players and how they play? And is it just going to feel like a scrimmage game to them?
That's going to be a difficult hurdle to come into play. I think that's a factor. I talked with Trip Tracy the other day. I said, well, we always talk about home ice advantage when you're going into the playoffs and how your crowd can affect those games. I think we saw that last year for the Carolina Hurricanes, how loud the PNC Arena and how energetic the fans were in that building. There was no question that there were a few of those games, especially against the Caps and the Islanders, that the fans really energized the players on that bench to push to the next level and get another huge victory. So I think it's going to take a lot to get used to in a quiet building. I haven't heard if they're talking about maybe pumping in some noise. Obviously, they'll always play music. But for a player, to me, we always hear Rod Brind'Amour talk about that he's only focused on his team and what they're doing. And I think that's going to be the big part of the playoffs when they do start. Which team can play their game the best and kind of shut out all of those outside effects that may be affecting a team or a game at that time.
And just like basketball, the season was about like 3/4 of the way done, and the playoff push was just getting stronger with every game. How does this shutdown affect the teams and their morale for that?
Well, I think mentally, I think players were ready for a break. That is the tough part of the season. As you're making that final push, it is a grind mentally to prepare. So I think each and every team, mentally, you're able to rest. Now, the main focus is that you remain positive, continue to train and push yourself at home so you're ready because you are coming back at some point. Now, the other factor I think a lot of people have forgotten about is every team was injured during this time. The Carolina Hurricanes were losing Dougie Hamilton, potentially not even going to be ready to play in the playoffs during the regular schedule. But now during this break, I know Dougie's working very hard to get healthy again and be prepared to step back on the ice in whatever facet it might be in these games that are going to continue for the Hurricanes. And really gives every opportunity. Teams are going to come back like it's the start of the season, re-energized, fresh, and healthy. And again, it's going to be that team that kind of gets back on track first that you could see make a run. It might not be that team that was sitting in first place when the pause happened. It could be an outside kind of dark horse that comes from the underground and make a big push and win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, so obviously the players who were injured, they are working really hard to get back into shape. But for the rest of the players, how do you think it'll take for them to get back into shape? Because some of them are taking some well-deserved rest, but some of them are also trying to keep where they left off.
Yeah, I think it's been different for every player. I think some players probably had a little bit more equipment and things like that at home that they could continue to use. I know a few players were probably jumping on Amazon right away to buy some kind of a bike, treadmill, weights they could get to fit in their house. So they knew they were going to be there for a prolonged period. So I think everyone was able to prepare that way. The one cushion that will be in effect once rinks kind of are open around the country and they open practice facilities similar to what the NBA did, the players will have a couple weeks on their own to skate together in small groups to get their legs going, and then they'll start kind of a mini training camp, which will be a 2 to 3 week period. So they're going to have a good 3 to 5 weeks to get back on the ice, to really start stepping on the gas pedal, if you will, again, to get up to speed and make sure they're as healthy and in shape as possible before the first game.
And how do you think this is going to affect the NHL in the long term? Is it going to have an impact to like the 2004 to 05 lockout?
I don't think it's going to have a negative effect like that, because I think everyone in the entire world is dealing with this pandemic and with the pause in professional sports and in their day-to-day lives. So when things get back to normal, I think everyone's going to be excited to get back to watching games on TV and get back to PNC Arena and take part in these hockey games, because we've all had that break and we're going to be excited for it to come back. I know as a staff, we're working extremely hard at PNC to be prepared now for reopening. What are the things we need to do, put in place to make sure our fans feel comfortable bringing their families back to PNC, to make sure they're part of not only Hurricanes games, but all the great events that are put on there.
So obviously we're all missing hockey right now and just really wanting it to get back. When do you think that the next season will start? Do you think it'll have a later start date, like in December or November?
So from some of the things I'm hearing, obviously after this break, I think they were kind of hoping for a mid-July restart. I think that's being pushed a little bit now with some of the stages around the country to more of a August 1st as being a realistic time to restart this season. So you look at August, September, potentially through October to get a Stanley Cup champion awarded. I think then the league is looking at taking a break to allow players to rest and have a modified summer break, if you will, in the fall in November. Then a potential is a restart early December, December 1, maybe late November range for the 2021 season.
So we initially asked you and Mike to guest commentate for one of our baseball games, but sadly, of course, due to these closures, that didn't come to happen. But we want to know what was going through your head when we initially pitched that to you.
Well, I was excited. I think, as I said, I didn't take media in school. I didn't go after a broadcasting degree, and I was given an opportunity. And I think what you guys are doing at Middle Creek and the things you're putting on to continue to grow in this area is huge. And Mike Maniscalco has helped me out a ton behind the camera in all his knowledge, because he does have that degree. And I think the big thing about when we're part of the Hurricanes as a player, and as Mike knows now that he works with the Hurricanes now for a few years, the biggest thing we're about is the community. And anytime we can come out and help out, especially our youth, even though they're not youth hockey players at the time, we want to come out and be a part of that. And any way we can help Middle Creek High School, although, I'm going to throw something out there. My daughter does go to Garner, so I know that's probably arch enemy, but I'm always happy to come out and help you guys. Maybe when you guys are playing Garner, that'd be a good time for me to come up.
Well, once again, oh yeah, of course. A few play games are the best, though.
Okay.
Well, once again, thank you for taking time out of your day to talk with us. We hope your family stays safe during these times, and we all can't wait for hockey to come back.
Ladies, I really appreciate it, and I totally agree. Can't wait for professional sports and to see the Hurricanes, even if it is on TV only for the rest of this year, to cheer them on and watch them make another run in the playoffs.
All right. Well, you're watching the Sports Block, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Sports Block, ladies and gentlemen. What a great show it's been so far. If you like what you're watching, make sure to click that like button and subscribe. We want to reach as many people as we possibly can, and we need your help. Join back again with Mr. Wes Petty and Mr. Ryan Magnuson.
Another great show, guys. We branched a little bit each episode we've done, and tonight, talking a little bit on the professional level as well as the high school level. So I think we continue to learn a lot about how so many people are being affected by this pandemic from a sports perspective. So just great to continue to have some really good conversations tonight about where we are.
And we'd like to send a final shout out to our guests tonight, Coach Bill Burniston and Shane Willis. Couldn't thank them enough for joining us tonight and making an awesome episode. Also, thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Sports Block. Tune in next week.